All right, let's do an example. So we're going to write a simple Java program that's going to prompt the user for a first name and last name. So that we're going to do this in the main. We're going to prompt for two values, string values, first and last name. Then we're going to write two modules that accept these two arguments, first and last name, and then the modules are just going to format and output the last name. So we'll have first last, which will output the first name and last name. We'll do last first, which will output the last name and first name separated by a comma. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to create a class. We're going to do our public static main. We're going to prompt for two string values, and then we're going to implement two simple methods with no return values. Okay, let's do that. So we'll come into Visual Studio Code. We're going to go ahead and open a folder. I'm going to be in my class here, so I'm going to go do this in week 9, and we'll call this a simple method. It will be our example. We'll go ahead and open that folder. Then inside that folder, we will add. We're going to add a file using the new file option, and we're going to call it, let's call it names.java. Let's call it NameMethods.java. Okay. So then, so now we can begin writing. So we can do public class name methods. Okay, there's our class, and then we can say public static void main. And we get our string args. Okay. Okay, there we go. Misspelled string. Okay, so we're going to need a scanner here. So let's go ahead and define a scanner. Scanner SE equals new scanner system.in. We're going to get errors here because we need to do the import for the scanner. So we'll use the quick fix to do that. Misspelled system should be a capital S. Okay, so now we need to prompt for two variables. So let's do system.out.println. We've written this code a bunch of times, so you should have it down how to define a scanner and collect data from the user. So we've done this 5, 6, 10, 15 times already. So this should be pretty familiar code. Please enter a first name. Okay, and then we can say string first equals scanner.nextLine. Then we'll do that again, system.out.println. We'll get the last name. Please enter a last name. String last equals scanner.nextLine. Misspelled string, fix the T. Okay, so now we have two variables. So now what I like to do is sometimes I like to write the call of the method before I define the method itself. So let's go ahead and do that. That helps me to kind of make sure that when I'm defining arguments in parameter lists that I'm kind of have a sanity check on, does it make sense to me as I'm writing it? So let's call this. So we're supposed to call our it first last and last first. So we have two here. So let's say first last. I'm doing that as lower camel case, and I'm going to do the first name and the last name as parameters. Okay, that makes sense. So then I can notice this is highlighted red. It says the method is not defined. That's because I haven't defined it yet. So now I can go ahead and start coding that method. There is a shortcut here using the quick fixes, but I'm going to do it by hand. And then when we do the next method, we'll use the shortcut just so you can see how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and start writing. So notice I'm going to put some space inside my class. So I'm inside the class right here, but I'm outside the main method. So I'm after the ending block of the main method. I'm going to put a space in there, and I'm just going to say public static void first, last. Notice the IntelliSense is already trying to help me. String first, string last. Okay, so those are my parameters. Declare the block, and I'm good. Notice my squiggly red line is gone because I've now defined this first, last. If I were to run this, the code will run. I don't have any errors. It will execute. Who's in your first name, last name, and it doesn't do anything because I haven't written any code yet. But it did execute the method. We just can't tell because the method doesn't do anything yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the output here. So this is very simple, system.out.println, and we're supposed to just output we'll do it first. I will say we're going to output the first name, then we're going to concatenate a space, and then we're going to output the last name. Okay, and that's it. That's all our method does. Very simplistic. Really just intended to get some muscle memory on how to type a method. Here's my first name, last name, and there it's concatenated together. Okay. Okay, let's do the next method. So the next method is last first. And it takes the same two arguments. Now I can use the quick fix here. So notice it's highlighted in red, which means it's not defined. I can click on my quick fix and I get an automatic fix to create the method, which I can do. And notice when it does that, it automatically generates for me the contents. It did mess up my indentation a little bit, so I'm going to fix that. Okay. But it did kind of over indent there. Okay. So now notice we have it created perfectly my definition. It created it as private, okay, which would work here. So we'll leave that just as an example. It created private static void last first, and it defined my two parameters, string first, string last. So it looks almost identical to the method I wrote by hand. But notice that it has this automatic error in it. So if I run this now, this is going to throw a runtime error. It throws a new unsupported operation exception. This is just with the quick fix reminding me that it created this method for me, but I didn't implement anything. So it wants to make sure that it's a reminder that you need to come back here and do some work. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete that auto code. And here we'll just do system.out.println, and now we'll print the last name, and we'll concatenate a comma and do the first name. Okay. And also notice that my methods here, we have last first and first last. So last first, the method is above, it's occurring first in the code, but the order of the methods doesn't matter because I'm calling them here. So even though last first is defined earlier in the code because it's called second, it will show up second in the execution. So the order of definition does not matter in the runtime of the code. Okay. So there we have it. So build Neely and Neely comma Bill. Okay, so when you have multiple methods here, I typically like to put them in alphabetical order. In this case, they're not. Last first technically would come after first last in alphabetical order. If you have 1, 2, 3 methods, it doesn't really matter. This whole program is only 22 lines long, so it's really easy to read. But in general, what I like to do if I'm going to have 8, 10, 15, 20 methods in my class, I'm going to put the main method first, and then I'm going to put all of my follow-on methods. Typically, I do it in alphabetical order. There's really no fast rule here. How you organize the code really is dependent on the team that you're working with and what makes sense to you. But my preference is to do it in alphabetical order. If you have a data class, sometimes you have some of the definitions. The data class has some unique types of methods that go with it, so you might put them first. But in general, this is a matter of style for your team. There is no hard fast rule here. My rule is I put them in alphabetical order. So technically, what I would do is I would want to put them like this. Okay. But honestly, the compiler doesn't care, and if you can read your code, then it really doesn't matter. Okay, all right, so there's our example. Let's run it again, make sure it still works after we move that method around. All right, still working. All right, so that's our example.